Hi, I'm Lisa Wieben of Encompass Equestrian, and today I'll be sharing with you the somatic reflex called the green light reflex. Now, the green light reflex is our go, go, go response. So it's as we're getting pushed forward, all the muscles in the back of our body tighten to push us forward. So you'll see a green light person as they're standing. They'll tend to stand with their knees locked. Their hips will be a little bit more pushed forward, and they'll have a definite arch to that lower back. And their shoulder blades might be pulled back, their chest is a little bit more lifted, and their chin tends to be pulled back. So the other thing you'll notice, if you look at the person from the front, is their toes will be a little bit more toed out. So if you think back to the skater, as they push off, they're using these muscles in the back of the body, and by putting their toes out, they get more power with that. So a true green light person will be a little bit more toed out, and they'll have a lot of tension through the back of their body, their glutes, their hamstrings, their calves. That lower back area tends to get really tight. Now, one of the things that happens with this response is because they have that arched back, their belly tends to push forward. So a lot of people will tell them they need to strengthen their core in order to bring that back underneath themselves. So when we strengthen their core without addressing these tight muscles in the back, then we end up with tight muscles in the back, tight muscles in the front, and it makes it really hard for us to use our centers effectively. So we want to be able to release that tension in our back, and the movement we do today will help us do that. But first, before we go down to the floor, I just want to show you what this would look like when you're sitting on your horse. So a person sitting in a green light reflex will have that arch in the back. Their shoulders will be pulled back and their chest will be lifted. So if you think of when somebody told you to sit up straight, you kind of went up, sit up straight, and that chest lifted. So if you remember back to the centering video, we did what was called the clip, and we brought the chest down, which helped to flatten our lower back and created that neutral pelvis. But we can't always go into a clip and just say, okay, that fixes it. Because what happens with somatics is that pattern, that arched pattern has been learned, and it's in the subconscious mind. So it's a habit in your brain that you keep going back to. So the only way that we can come out of this pattern is by creating a new pattern, by bringing our awareness to the tightness that's already there and releasing that tightness. Then we're able to create a new habit in the body of that neutral spine and neutral pelvis. So another thing that happens with that arched back is we get a lot of compression in that low back area. So you'll find a lot of people that get spinal issues because of that compression that's happening in their back. And if we think about our horses, when you see a horse with its head lifted up trying to move forward, you know the spine is really tight. If you've ever sat on a horse's back when they pop their head up, you felt that tightness underneath your seat. Especially if you're riding bareback, you definitely feel the muscles come on when your horse popped his head up. So just like we want our horses to have a relaxed back and be able to move forward, we also need to relax that lower back area. And we don't want to be rounded forward when we're riding, but we do want to find that neutral pelvis. So let's go down to the floor and we'll do the movement that will help us start to release that tension in our lower back and our entire back line as well. So for the back lift, we'll be laying on our stomach. So go ahead and lay down on the floor on your stomach or on your mat. You'll have your right hand facing your left cheek on the floor, and your left arm is just straight along your left side. So all the movements that we do with this one, every time we lift up, it will be on an inhale, and then we'll slowly release back down to the floor on the exhale. With each of these movements, if you notice any jumpy, jerky, shaky movements as you're lowering, slow the movement down even more. And then next time, maybe not make the movement quite as high. So we're always moving within our comfortable range, making sure there's no tension, no stretching as we're moving through these movements. So to start with, take an inhale and very slowly lift your elbow up as if you're hitting a ball over a net in front of you. And then as you exhale, we're slowly lowering it back down, noticing any jumpiness that's in there, and then letting it melt onto the floor. So the other thing I like to do when I touch down to the floor is take an extra breath and make sure any tension that I was holding is let go. Because there's always something our body tends to get used to us going into repetitions like we do with other workouts. So it's prepared for the next movement. So we want to make sure it comes fully down into that relaxed state, because that's the state that's going to make the biggest change in our body. So on the next inhale, lift the elbow up again, feeling any tension. Notice where you feel the tension. Bring your awareness to it, and then slowly melt that back down. Good. And then take an extra breath and let everything melt. So now we'll bring our awareness just to our head. So as we inhale, we're going to lift our head up off the floor. So we'll inhale and lift up as if we're looking over our shoulder, feeling that tension down our back, and then very slowly melting it back down. So we don't have to lift up very high, just enough till you start to notice that tension that comes on in your back. So again, think inhale, lifting up, and exhaling to release down. And again, just take that breath, let everything melt. Now, if you slide your fingertips underneath your cheek just a little bit and glue your fingertips to your cheek, because on this next one, as we lift up, we're going to lift elbow, head, cheek, and hand up off the mat. And your left shoulder will stay close to the floor. So it's like the hinge of a door, and we're just opening the door. So as we take an inhale, think elbow, head, cheek, and hand come up off the floor. So you're opening the door, and then we're slowly lowering it back down. Okay, we'll do that one again and see if you notice how that movement goes across the body and down into your left leg. So as you inhale, lifting up, elbow, head, cheek, hand, and you might notice some tension over here on your left side. You might even feel your left foot coming up off the floor. And then slowly lowering it back down. Letting everything melt. Take that extra breath at the bottom. And notice if anything else lets go. Now this time we'll bring our awareness down into that left leg. And as you inhale, we'll lift the left leg kind of up and away from the body. So as you inhale, lifting the leg up, and then slowly floating that leg down. Taking the breath, letting everything melt. Now, as you lifted the leg, you might notice that tension across to your right shoulder. You might have even noticed your right shoulder wanting to get pulled back with that movement. So let's do that again, just the left leg. So we'll inhale, lifting the left leg up. Exhale, letting it release down and letting everything melt. So now we're working more through the glutes and the hamstrings and the calf as that leg lifts up, and then letting all of that tension melt down. So now let's put all of these pieces together. So elbow, head, cheek, hand, and opposite leg, all in the same breath. So as we inhale, lifting up slowly, and then as we exhale, slowly bringing it back down to the floor and letting everything go. So the important piece with this is to notice the tension that gets created. So you might not even come up off of the floor very far when you notice. So right there, I can feel the tension in my back, and then I can release it down. So this doesn't have to be a big movement. You want to keep it small to start, and then as your body starts to get more released, you'll be able to make it bigger and bigger. So let's do that one more time. We'll inhale, coming up, and then exhaling. See if you can get the leg and the hand to touch down at the same time. And then extra breath, let everything melt. And then we'll roll over and do this on the other side. Stay on my camera. So again, we're going to have our left hand this time up by our cheek, and our right hand will go down by our side. So my right hand's straight down by my side, left hand's up by my cheek, and we'll go through all those parts again. So as we inhale, floating the elbow up, noticing your comfortable range, and then slowly lowering it back down, noticing any jumpiness at all. This area can tend to have a lot of jumpiness because there's a lot of tension around that area, that shoulder area. Okay, let's do the elbow one more time. So inhale, floating the elbow up, feeling where there's tension. And then exhaling to release it back down. Nice and slow, melting all the way out. Taking the extra breath. Okay, now we'll lift just the head. So we'll inhale, lifting the head, noticing that tension down the spine. So it'll be straight down the spine. And then as we exhale, letting it melt back to the floor. Good. And one more time with just the head. So we'll inhale. It's as if you're going to peek over that shoulder. And then exhaling to come back down. And let everything melt. Okay, so now with the fingertips underneath your cheek, have them glued together, and we'll lift elbow, head, cheek, and hand all at the same time. So when you're ready, take inhale, elbow, head, cheek, and hand as if you're opening a door, and then exhaling to lower that back down. And again, you might notice how that went from that left shoulder all the way across your back down into that right leg. So let's do that one again and just bring your awareness across the body and see what happens in your right leg. So we're inhaling up. Maybe your right leg wants to float a little bit, and that's okay. And then exhaling to float back down. And let everything melt. And as you let everything melt, you might notice what lets go last. And just bring some awareness to that area. So now think about just your right leg. So as we inhale, we'll inhale, float the leg up. And then exhale and melt it down to the floor. So you're lifting the entire leg. And you can kind of think of that leg moving away from the body as it lifts up. So you can reach down and lift on the inhale. And then as you exhale, bringing it down to the floor. Okay, now let's put all of the pieces together in one nice smooth lift. So as you inhale, we're floating elbow, head, cheek, hand, and leg. And then slowly coming back down. Releasing all that tension in the back of the body and letting it melt. And let's do that again. Inhaling to come up. And then exhaling. Melt it all the way down. Take that extra breath and let everything melt. So this is working all the muscles involved in the green light reflex. So we're bringing our awareness to those areas and then we're letting it melt back to the floor. So the release at the end is the most important part with this one. So now roll back over onto your back and bring your knees up and we'll put our hands behind our head. So whenever we do the back lift, we're extending our back, so we want to be able to bring some of that out and lengthen the spine again. So we'll put our hands behind our head. This almost looks like a sit-up position, but it's a very different kind of sit-up. So for this one, if we think back to our arch and flatten, we'll go into that arch and flatten. And as we start to melt our belly down towards the floor, we'll bring our elbows in and continue to curl up into a curl. And then inhaling to come back. Exhaling to release our elbows out to the side. So we'll do that again. So we'll inhale, arching our back, letting our arms press back a little bit. And then as we exhale, waiting until our back is flat, and then bringing the elbows in and curling up on the exhale. And then think inhale to come back, lengthening the spine. Exhale to release the elbows to the outside. And we'll do that one more time. So we'll have an inhale to start. Inhale and arch. Exhale, sink in the center, bringing the elbows in, continuing to exhale as you curl up, and then inhaling, spine is long, exhaling to release to the outside. So that just brings that length back into the spine and allows everything to open up again. And then if you want to stretch your legs out, you can feel how your back feels. Now, before I do the back lift, I would do my arch and flatten at the beginning to prepare my body front and back for the movement of the back lift, because the back lift is a pretty strenuous movement. So anytime you're doing the back lift, you want to move very slowly and definitely within your comfortable range. Because it's such a big movement, you want to take care of that lower back. And even if it means you're just barely lifting off the floor to start and then coming back down. But what the back lift does is it's addressing the green light pattern, but it's also our walking pattern. Because if you think about it, as your left shoulder goes back, your right leg is going back and vice versa. So you're working that walking pattern while you're doing this green light reflex. So try this one out this week and see how it feels, and I will be sharing another exercise soon. So enjoy, and we'll see you soon.